Thank you all for being here. I will try to figure out the clicker. Apparently, no lessons. I wanted to take a few minutes talk about disruptive forces in food and food tech in particular. I think we talk about, and Jamie mentioned sort of core tech. And food tech, I think, is an area where we're doing more and more over time to disrupt an industry that fundamentally hasn't seen innovation since the pre-sliced bagel, basically. And that's what HelloFresh aims to do. And I wanted to kind of level set with this. So this is the question that I ended up asking myself: what do you do when you find a $100 billion problem? Any guesses from folks what the problem might be? What's the $100 billion problem? Food waste, yeah. I heard a few people say it there. Absolutely. So this says 31 billion. The other 77, actually it's a $108 billion problem. The other $77 billion is all of the associated labor, water, and energy inputs that go into making the food that is then wasted. And that's just Canada. 40% of what we grow in Canada is never eaten. Any idea where the biggest culprit is in food waste? Who's the biggest culprit? Yeah, unfortunately, it's not McDonald's or Walmart or anybody like that. It's us. It's all of us. So, yeah, this assumes 10 million households in Canada, each of us wasting more or less $1,500 worth of food every year. So $30 a week in bunches of cilantro that have gone off and moldy bread and everything else that you buy but never eat. And as a dad and in a family of four, absolutely, we're right in the thick of that before HelloFresh. So food waste, big problem. And meal kits, basically zero waste. And that's because you build it from the bottom up. You start with how many calories you need to be a happy, healthy human being, and you build a meal based on that. So sort of the thought I had on it, basically, when you find a $100 billion problem, there are probably at least a few billion-dollar solutions. And if you're lucky, you can grab onto a couple megatrends for momentum, convenience, healthy food, and you can use data, and this is super important. You use data to build a strong moat. So we get every single recipe rated by every single person who cooks it. Obviously, not everybody rates it, but we try hard. And it builds globally to the world's largest food preference data set. Over 500,000 customer data points per week and growing. And that's been running since 2013 globally, since 2016 in Canada. So it's a metrics-driven approach to what Canadians actually want to eat. So this is a little bit on HelloFresh, our story, in two pictures. This is day one. Actually, it's not quite day one. It's about day 32. I had to draft my wife in to make the banner, and I borrowed the desk and the chair, and I borrowed the computer as well. And that was truly how it started. And this was us about 2 weeks ago. So there are a lot of people here from the HelloFresh team. You may recognize some of them from the pictures. They may also be wearing HelloFresh clothes. If you do see them, find them, talk to them, because they're giving out free boxes of HelloFresh. But that's us. So it's been, I think, a ton of fun, and I wanted to share, I suppose, a little bit on insights about what I've learned in the process. And I think it's about myself, it's about building a team, and then a little bit about what not to do. So about myself, I think the first thing is this idea of aligning interests to unlock passion. And you'll hear this, I think, from a ton of people. I would just like to reiterate it, that actually finding a place where my flow is good, it really does help. Because the other part of that is that when you lead something, when you start something, my own experience of it is I lead with emotion, but I need a compelling narrative for change, and I have to buy into it myself. As much as needing to convince everybody else, owning it myself makes it real for me. And that, I think, is super important. And then this last thing, I lost it on the screen, so I pulled it back up again, the idea of be yourself, but better. So be authentic, but be purposeful in the way you go about what you seek to do. So about building a team, smartest possible person for the role every time. That's been us. In a nutshell, in this idea of ability over experience when you have to make a choice. The logic there for me is we're trying to build a team to solve tomorrow's problems, not yesterday's. Focus on people with a reputation for getting the job done, because great ideas don't do a lot in desk drawers. And then I think the last one for me around disrupting something, really hard to disrupt something in our experience if you don't believe that there's such a thing as a win-win. So if you think about it this way, if I'm disrupting it, I got to convince you to do something different. And if I convince you to do something different and I don't see it as a win-win, then it's a win-lose and you're going to lose. So I got to kind of believe in my core value set that I have a win-win and that I can actually sell a win-win. Otherwise, disruption starts to sound a little bit like somebody losing. And then the last thing on this, what not to do, don't follow blindly. Early on in HelloFresh, we spent 3 weeks shipping another company's ice packs that had their logos on them and everything to all our customers. Literally 3 weeks we did this because almost every single person in the company saw that and said, Farmigo? What's Farmigo? Oh, it must be a new ice pack supplier. And then the one guy who knew it finally saw them and said, Farmigo, they used to be a competitor of mine in my old company. So don't follow blindly, ask the stupid questions even when you feel stupid, so you don't ship somebody else's product by accident. Don't ignore stinky chicken problems. If you've ever opened vacuum-sealed chicken, you may notice that sometimes it collects a smell, and don't assume that that's okay just because everyone else in the industry is doing it. It's still stinky chicken. It's safe, but sort of challenge all of the industry assumptions, basically, and listen to your customers, and then get out of the way. Thanks. Any questions? At the back.
Hi, Ian. I was wondering, what's the most interesting thing that you've learned from all of that food preference data you've collected?
Tacos.
Thank you.
Next. No, seriously. Canadians love tacos. Number one thing. If you just, whatever it is, just put the word taco at the end of it, score goes up.
Hi there.
Hi. So regarding the procurement of the food, is this against the demand of the customer? So when the customer asks for specific meals and then you procure the produce against it? I'm just curious because you talked about waste. So does your business model also not have waste in terms of you procuring the produce in advance?
Correct. So we run an entirely just-in-time process. Okay. So we obviously forecast to our suppliers and they start to prepare and you have a pretty good idea of what you're going to need. But we don't close our orders until after our customers have closed their orders, which means that you go back to that food waste conversation, 14% of that is in the grocery supply chain, and another 18% is in distribution networks. So you still have some distribution challenges, but the waste you see in the dumpster behind the grocery store, et cetera, we don't have that issue.
Excellent.
Hi there. So I'm not familiar with your product, so there's a little bit of education you're going to have to help me here with. I'm not sure if you're giving like raw produce like carrots or something like that, or if it's cooked foods. But in both cases, to me, I have kids and they have food allergies. So I'm not sure how you track anything who has ordered anything, because if certain food allergies, cross-contamination and all that, if there's a rating and managing to make sure, because I had taken my kids in New York City to the hospital because of food allergy cross-contamination. The second question, because you have volumes of data, thousands of million points of data, would you consider taking another angle with that data and selling that as a marketing data to another company?
So to the first question, Health Canada, CFIA defines, I think there's 10 or 11 specific named allergies, or allergens rather, in food. And you disclose those allergens because it's important that you do so, because there are people with health conditions that rely on that information. So, and vis-a-vis the may contain, I mean, the reality, I think, certainly for HelloFresh, et cetera, is that we'll actually advise a potential customer not to buy the product if they have a severe allergy, because we're a new business running multiple supply chains that are just in time across the country, and you're going to have food that's processed in facilities that may contain peanuts, et cetera. And so I think the best we can say about allergens is that we proactively declare every single thing that we're shipping you, and they're 100% real ingredients, if you will. There's not the ingredient list is not a page and a half long, it's 10 or 11 ingredients. Regarding the second question, ultimately I think that the data as a business isn't a model that we're looking at.
Last question.
I'd like to know who are your competitors? Is it like the people going to the grocery store or who else?
I would argue our main competitor is actually the status quo. Because the core of what meal kits do, I mean, obviously, yeah, we send you dinner. We create recipes, we put them in a box, but really what we're asking you to do is trust us with menu planning, trust us with shopping. And you are the status quo then, right? Because you probably did that last week. So in reality, it's a behavior change sale that you're trying to make, and consequently, what you're really trying to do is convince people to put trust in you. When we trained our original sales agents in 2016, I distilled it thusly for them. It says, think about this sale at its most awkward. You're trying to sell raw chicken to a mother through Purolator that they will feed to their children. It's delicious, isn't it? And so at the end of the day, it's a behavior change sale, it's a trust-based sale. You're trying to convince somebody to outsource picking a tomato for them. Answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you.